wish I could say it's, smooth sailing, but today's actually probably been one of the most insane days of the past month or two, which is, I mean, it's fun because it's already 2 o'clock and I feel like I haven't had time to wipe my nose, but it's been, it's been insane.
Yeah, keeps you on your
Yeah.
toes though.
Yeah. Oh, there's never a doubt, especially dealing with, football coaches and having signing day in 2 days is, I have to be on top of my P's and Q's.
Yeah, it has to be a hectic time of year too.
Yeah, but I mean, it's what I signed up for, and it's what I like doing, so I'm fine with it. It just is always trying to deal with expectations and egos.
Of course. Awesome. Well, I'd love to hear more about that. Did you get my list of questions last night by
I
chance?
did. Yeah.
Cool. All right. So usually how we start this out is just talk about your role. Basically, I know you're at the University of Central Florida, so just basically dive into your role, your responsibilities and duties, and how you got there after graduating from the University of Wisconsin Madison, just to get the ball rolling.
Sure. So I'll start with the career journey. So I graduated from UW in 2010, went to law school, um, ended up starting law school down in Arizona and transferring back to UW. So I transferred back to UW, and I always knew I wanted to work in sports. Involved with the sports business club. And after school ended, I had some experience interning, through ESPN radio in Madison and stuff like that, but not enough that I felt comfortable starting a career and knowing which direction I wanted to go. But I knew that I was interested in athletics compliance, which is a huge niche. But I played obviously sports growing up, and like just having the interactions that I had with athletics compliance officers, I figured it'd be a good way to not only give back to student athletes because I had a good experience, but also to use my skill set to like positively impact their lives because it's kind of the intersection of athletics and the law and putting my skills as being analytical and a communicator to use. So during law school, I volunteered with the WEAC conference, the D3 conference, and I just kind of was a law clerk for the commissioner, just doing any work he needed me to do, whether it was stuff on whether or not referees were independent contractors or employees of the conference, to some stuff on whether radio stations could have broadcast rights to like a baseball tournament, stuff like that. That kind of wet my whistle and made me realize that this is what I wanted to do with my life. So after I finished law school, I didn't have a job. I didn't have any leads because I was doing all of the work myself. I didn't go to Marquette's law school where they have the sports and entertainment law organization because A, I'm a Wisconsin guy through and through. B, I was saving money going to Wisconsin. And C, I've always had the perspective that if I want something bad enough, I'll make it happen no matter what my circumstances are. So I didn't necessarily make it easy on myself, but I knew that I did the right thing for me. So I had applied to probably like 75 jobs, give or take, in compliance, and I hadn't heard back from a single one of them. So what I did was I went to the Sports and Entertainment Law Society conference down at Marquette, ironically, in October of 2013 after I graduated in May. I paid for my own trip down there, and I got a hold of the list of the keynote speakers, and I emailed every single one of them, basically asked for like 10 minutes of their time between sessions. I got responses from some of them, but not all, and I just went there, like, threw on a suit, rented a car, went down there, and just tried to network. And I met a bunch of people, but there were a couple people that really stuck out, both at the time and for the future. The first one was meeting a gentleman by the name of Rod Coffrin, and that's Caughron, and he's the head of the sport management program at Northern Illinois. And I was actually in one of the sessions. I'm giving you the long version of all this, but I was in one of the sessions listening, and I went out to get some coffee, and there was one person sitting out in the atrium. And I had my coffee, and I can still remember it as clear as day of like being there and like ready to go back in, and then I had this split second thought of like, I'm here to meet people and network, so like why am I like gonna be passive about this? Like I should be aggressive. So I like took a deep breath, turned around, and walked and introduced myself to him. And I sat next to him for the next like 3 hours as we just like talked about me, where I was going, what he does, and then like he knew a bunch of people in compliance, so he in between sessions would introduce me to everybody and their brother. And throughout the whole time, he was selling me on going to NIU to be a graduate assistant. That he could get me a graduate assistantship in the spring, and he could like kickstart my career. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know. I just finished law school. That like was 3 years of my life. I'll never get back. Like, I don't know if I want to go to grad school now on top of it, but I'll think about it. And we talked the whole time and discussed with some compliance people. Okay. Sorry, my coworker just tapped on my door.
No problem.
My interactions with these people were kind of like, why does this dude want to get into compliance? Like, who is this guy? And then some people actually like gave me some good insight. But the person that also really helped me was at the very end of the day, there were some people from the NCAA there, and I walked up to one of them that I'd emailed and asked for a few minutes of his time, and we started chatting, and he asked me to tell him a little bit about myself and this, that, and the other thing. And his name was Bill Nesnadal, and I don't know if you need that, but it's Nesnidal.
Awesome.
And we chatted for like 45 minutes just about where I was, what I was trying to do, my goals, all this stuff. He works for the NCAA enforcement department, which is like one of my dream jobs. I had applied to the NCAA postgraduate internship 3 times, and I told him that. The first time was out of undergrad, and I didn't even get like a call back, much less an interview or a rejection email. Then I applied after my second year of law school. Didn't get it, didn't even get a call back, an email, whatever. And then I had applied about a few weeks before that interview or that meetup. And I told him, this is my 3rd time applying. Like, I know this is what I want to do. I have no doubt in my mind that's why I've been too stubborn to give up. I just don't know how I'm going to get in. That's why I'm here. I'm desperate, basically. I know I don't have as much experience, but I make up for it in like desire, and I think you can see that why I'm here. And we talked about that and just how he had gotten where he had gotten. And then, the day kind of ended, and I went home and was just like, well, who knows. So I stayed in touch with Rod a little bit here and there, and I had been back at my original like part-time job that I had worked during law school, but it was a dead-end job going nowhere. So Rod had called me up at the start of January. It was like, basically like, you've got until this Friday to make a decision because school starts on Monday. What are you gonna do? And this was on like Wednesday, and I was still like hemming and hawing, and my parents were like, what else are you doing? And I'm like, well, nothing, but I don't want to go back to school and blah, blah, blah. And they're like, you're not getting the point here. Like, you have nothing. You've got an opportunity. Like, get off your ass. So I was like, okay, on Friday, moved down on Sunday and started on Monday. And I was a graduate assistant in the Student Athlete Academic Support Services department, and started work on my master's. So as I was in that role, I was working with their football team, and I had 15 high-risk student athletes that I was responsible for. I was responsible for making sure they went to class. I was responsible for making sure they did their assignments. I was responsible for making sure that, they didn't miss appointments, miss tutor appointments, what have you, and really was just a glorified babysitter. But I used that to kind of build relationships with these kids and figure out, what I was good at, what did I need to work on, and like what it was like to really work in college athletics, on the other side.
Yeah.
So while I was doing that, I was there for 6 months, and I was there for 6 months because about 6 weeks into it, I got a call from the NCAA saying that they wanted to interview me for this internship. So during my phone interview, I told them, like, oh yeah, I'm actually working in Illinois right now, and this, that, and the other thing, and they didn't know that. So my interview was for the academic and membership affairs area, and that's where the NCAA does all of their interpretations of the rules. They file waivers of, for exceptions to the rule, and they basically write the manual, the rule manual. So I interviewed with them and was fortunate enough to have an in-person interview. So the way that the NCAA postgraduate internship works is they've got somewhere over 1,000 people that apply. There were 25 spots across, I think, 14 departments. And like within AMA, there were 4 spots. Within enforcement, there were 3 spots. So they brought me there for the AMA interview, and I think they interviewed 50 people over the course of 2 days. So they brought me there and participated in the interviews, and I bombed the AMA interview. I was terrible. I was so anxious that I overdid it, and I'll never forget that in the AMA interview, one of the questions they asked me was like, okay, you're a Big Ten guy, what's a Big Ten school you admire, and what's a Big Ten school that you don't like, and why? So I started off on I don't like Michigan State. And I know it's kind of random, but it's I don't like Michigan State because Wisconsin's just gotten done playing football against them a bunch of times, and they were just very their fans were just full of themselves and disrespectful and this, that, and the other thing. And it's but a school I admire is Penn, and I froze. And I was the Jerry Sandusky thing had just come up, and I turned 7 shades of red. It's not what you think. I don't condone that at all, blah, blah, blah. I'm just speaking from my experience with the people I know and that went there and stuff. But I was this is going downhill fast. So I was just tucking my tail between my legs I'm screwed. But the afternoon session, they had kind of a round table where they had people from every single department there to interview the candidates. And we were split into true groups of 12, and within that, the 12 candidates would be in a horseshoe, and the people up at the front would ask a question. You never knew who they were going to ask first. Everybody had to answer it, but you never knew who was going to answer it first. So I crushed that part. I was composed, calm, whatever. So I went up to one of the enforcement people afterward, actually, and was thanks for your time. I'd applied for your job. I think it's really interesting, but AMA brought me here. But I just wanted to know that I appreciate your time and that I was very interested in you all. And the woman there was yeah, we thought you had great answers, and I was actually gonna find you and see if you wanted to interview with us this afternoon. And I'm what do you mean? We've got half an hour left. We're done at 5 o'clock, and it's almost 4:30 right now. She's yeah, I know, but my colleagues are already down here. If you want to just pop into this room with us. And I'm sure, that would be great. So I walk into this room, and it's Molly and 2 other people, and one of the other people is Bill Nesnadel. And I walk in there, I'm oh my God. The stars are aligning kind of thing. And I had the most conversational interview I've ever had. Because I had nothing to hide. Bill already knew everything. He knew my soul from what I wanted to do from a work standpoint. So I was just very straightforward. I don't have the experience or the recommendations of these other people, but what I've got is heart and ethics and a desire to succeed. So I just laid it all out there, and when I went back into the kind of common room, they said, okay, those of you that were here that had interviews with more than one department, you need to re-rank your order of preference. And it's kind of like the fraternity and the sorority thing where it's you make your choices, but the departments also make their choices. And if you match up, then you match.
Yeah.
So I was freaking out. I'm do I dance with the girl that brought me here, or do I dance with the one that I want to dance with? So I just made the choice. I'm I I've always wanted to do enforcement, and I think like I'm pretty into my faith, and I was like, I think God wouldn't have put me in this situation with Bill if I wasn't meant to like go there. So I did that and kind of just wrote it off, and I was just like, well, I tried. And long story shorter is that I ended up getting the offer, and man, that was an emotional day. So I ended up moving to Indianapolis, and I know I'm being long-winded, but
no problem.
I'm excited to talk to you, honestly. So I'm like, just want to give you all the full picture, and you can use whatever you want.
Yeah, no, I want to hear it.
So I moved to Indianapolis in June of 2014 and joined the postgraduate internship class with enforcement. So there were 3 interns total. And what I did there was I processed violations of NCAA bylaws. So schools will self-report violations. They say, yep, we screwed this up. We're admitting it. And I would research those violations, confirm that there were violations, and then I would issue a penalty to them. I was the judge, the jury, and the executioner. And I would be like, there are standard stuff like recruiting somebody. If you call a kid before September 1st of their junior year in high school, that's against the rules. So the penalty is 2 for 1, where the day that it's first permissible, you have to withhold from calling them for 2 weeks because you've already had 1 impermissible opportunity. So I would issue those penalties. And while I was there, I was also able to get in on some major investigations, participate in the interviewing of high-profile coaches or writing up memos of interviews and, advocating for, why this school deserved to be penalized or why they didn't deserve to be penalized, or investigating stuff when there were allegations of, gambling in college athletics, and working up flow charts of who knows who and who's involved with who and who's taking money from who. So I did that for a year and 3 months. It was a year-long program, but again, just like law school, I didn't have a job at the end of it. But what I did have was I had taken a week to go visit some schools in Alabama. The NCAA gave us a $1,000 stipend to basically travel anywhere in the U.S. that we wanted to and visit sports organizations. So I was between going to the Carolinas or Alabama. I wanted to go to the Carolinas because I always wanted to live there, go to the Triangle, see Duke, North Carolina, NC State, all that. But one of the other interns had already made that trip. So I'm like, I'll go to Alabama. The literal words out of my mouth to my parents were, I'm never going to go back to Alabama again. So at least I can check that state off of my list.
There you go.
So I went to Birmingham. I started out in Birmingham, went to UAB, and then I visited this school called Samford University. It's a Division I FCS school in Birmingham. Beautiful campus, pink brick, gated entry, private school. Hit it off with the people there, and just talked about where I was, what I was looking to do. Then I went to Alabama, I went to Auburn, and then I came back to Birmingham at the end. Well, while I was at Auburn, Samford played Auburn in football. So I was with the Auburn people just kind of kicking it up in the press box, and then I ran into the Samford people. And I struck up a conversation with them again and, was chatting with them and just hit it off with them really well. So come to find out that at the end of my internship, when I'm applying to jobs, I had applied to a job at Middle Tennessee State to work in compliance. And they had told me, you're our front runner, talking salary, this stuff with you. I had my in-person interview, thought it was all good. And then I hadn't heard anything from them for 2 weeks. I'm like, this is kind of weird. And then one day I'm sitting at my desk and I get a call from Birmingham. And it's the number 2 in athletics at Samford. And it's like, hey, Paul, do you have a job? And I was like, well, I don't know, because I applied for this job at Middle Tennessee State and I'm waiting to hear back. And her name was Michelle Durbin, Durban. And she was like, oh, Cody got that job. We want to hire you for Cody's job. Cody was their compliance person. So I found out from Samford that I didn't get the Middle Tennessee job, but that they wanted to hire me. So I didn't even have to interview. They just hired me based on knowing me for like 3 days and the fact that I worked at the NCAA. So I moved down there in the first week of August in 2015, and I was there for exactly a year. I was their only compliance person. So I did everything for, I think, 17 varsity sports and like 400 student athletes. I did all of their recruiting. I did all of their amateurism certification. I did all of their NCAA eligibility with academics. And, I did the awards and benefits, and I handled their playing seasons, how much they could practice and what their schedules were in that. So it was a baptism by fire because I was pretty much thrown to the wolves from day one and had to figure it out because it was just me and we're not a high resource school. So I grew from that pretty quickly, and by the end of the year I was like, okay, I've done this and I've done it well, and they've told me I've done it well, so I kind of know what I'm worth, so I need to go somewhere, I think, to keep growing and to keep being challenged. So I was just browsing the NCAA's job center, and I saw this job at Central Florida, and I'm like, okay, they were pretty good at football, and then they were really bad this last year, but it was an academic job, and my background is in academics, so I applied for it, and one of my mentors at the NCAA knew the person that was hiring at UCF, so they actually offered me the job, and I turned them down because Samford had offered me a raise. And then I stayed at Samford and had another interview at Vanderbilt, and Vanderbilt told me I was their front runner, this, that, the other thing, talk salary, and then they hired someone else. So I was sitting here and I had the discussion with my bosses of they could kind of tell I was restless and that I wanted to move on. So if I'm being frank, I think they were kind of frustrated too that they weren't good enough for me. That they wanted somebody that wanted to be there, and I don't blame them at all for that. So I called UCF back because I had looked at their website and noticed that they hadn't put anybody's name on their website for the position they had offered me. And they said, well, no, we haven't hired anybody because there were only 2 people that we wanted, and both of you turned us down because of the salary. And I said, well, I'm a free agent, so do you need me? And they were like, oh my God, yeah, we actually had another person leave, so when can you be here? So I showed up there 2 weeks later, and now I've been here for 2.5 years. Almost 2.5 years, I think it's 2 years and 4 months.
Yeah.
But as far as question 2, now that we're finally getting to that, the responsibilities and duties of my current role. So there are 5 people in my office, and 4 of us handle kind of the day-to-day stuff. So what I do on a daily basis is kind of a hybrid model. I work with 3 sports mainly: women's soccer, women's volleyball, and baseball. And I do everything for them that I did at Samford. Recruiting, amateurism, academics, benefits, playing seasons. Then I'm also the liaison for academics. So what that means is that I handle bylaw 14. So I do all of their academic eligibility, both initial kids coming out of high school. I'm the liaison for making sure that they're all going to be eligible to compete when they get here. If they've got a high enough GPA and test score. I work with admissions to get kids admitted, both undergrad, grad school, transfers, freshmen. And then I'm the liaison to the registrar's office. So I work with the registrar to make sure that the kids are here, are eligible, that they're meeting their progress toward degree requirements, that they're passing the required number of classes every term, that they're not engaging in academic misconduct, anything like that. So my responsibilities overall are really to be a bodyguard for the university's athletic department. A lot of people see compliance as like a police officer, that I'm out looking to get people in trouble and catch them in the act and to report them to the NCAA so the NCAA can fire them. But that's like a narrow view. And if people look at me like that, that means I'm not doing my job well enough, because then I'm an adversary and I want to be an accomplice with them. I want to be their bodyguard to protect them from the trash, but also support them in what they want to do.
Mm-hmm.
So what that looks like is a coach brings a transcript to me and says, can we get this kid eligible? It's not my job to say no, or it's not my job to like look at him and be like, well, you're just going to do this regardless, so should I start writing up the violation now? That's not right. The right thing for me to do is to look at it, to figure out, okay, where are we? Where do we need to be? How can we get there? And if we can get there, here's how. But if we can't get there, we've exhausted A through Z, and not only can we not do it, but no other school can do it. So I'm kind of filtering for them the stuff that they don't, either want to deal with or have the ability to deal with. So academically, that looks like looking at transcripts for eligibility. It's looking at what they're passing every term and making sure that they're still eligible. For recruiting, that's, okay, this kid wants to come on a visit. Here's what we need to have for them to come on a visit. Here's when they can come on a visit. Here's how often you can talk to them after the visit. Here's what you can post on social media about them. And here's, how often you can visit them, they can visit you, X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
So I also deal with the stuff of like, they want to get an award or benefit, like the coaches want to feed the team a meal. How often can they do that? I don't go to their houses and try and figure out if they're having a meal and haven't told me. I'm just there to say, here's how often you can do it. Here's the information.
Yeah.
So my responsibility is to help them get where they need to be. But also, if they mess up, my responsibility is to have the moral code and the ethical, compass to report them to the NCAA.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the time, the NCAA looks at violations not as a mistake, but as the hallmark of a healthy relationship within your department, and also a strong investigative backbone. So the NCAA expects each school to self-report violations every year. And you can report your violations monthly as they happen, every 6 months. It's really up to you. But basically the standard is you should have at least one violation per sport per year. So we've got 15 sports. So what we're looking at is, if we're not reporting about 15, 25 violations every year, are we really monitoring our programs well?
Mm-hmm.
So the coaches understand that I'm not looking to get them in trouble, but if they screw up, I have to report them. And it's good for everybody, because it shows that we're paying attention. It shows that the coaches know they've screwed up. And it shows that we've discussed it with them, and it's either not going to happen again, or if it happens again, they'll be fired. So I'm involved in that reporting process. And then I'm also involved in the investigative process of, if stuff goes bad often enough for long enough, then it becomes a major investigation, and I have to, interview coaches. I have to work with the NCAA to do basically the opposite of what I did as an intern. I have to give them the information so that they can do their investigation, and then they can penalize us. So it's kind of a fun job. It's sadistic, because you can't have a lot of pride in this job, because you're working with people that make a lot more money than you do, and that their jobs are on the line, pretty much every game. Whereas mine is on the line if I screw up and give a coach a wrong answer, or I don't report something. So it's a lot of stress if you let it be, but if you're communicative and you're thorough and you're disciplined and honest, it's a fun job.
Yeah.
Man, we've already covered a half an hour. I'm just getting warmed up here.
All right. Well, let's keep rolling. All right. Oh, also, by the way, you were a part of UW Club Baseball, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. I actually worked as a marketing intern under Jeff Block for a couple months in my sophomore year. So it's cool. He's a good guy.
Yeah, he is.
Awesome.
He's doing God's work in their varsity team back, and I hope he does.
Yeah. Hopefully. I think I'm more optimistic about it now that I worked with him and saw what he was doing, his efforts with it, but still a long way to go. Awesome. All right. So we've covered career journey and responsibilities and duties. Now I usually just like to get this point in with like every call I do to like kind of just advice to SBC members looking to break in to the sports industry. I know your specialty is NCAA compliance, so just maybe some essential skills or just job search advice for members.
Sure. The first thing I would say, based on everything I've already told you, is don't quit. Don't let other people dictate your future to you. I had many opportunities to do that, but I was too stubborn, too stupid, whatever you want to say, to give up because I believed in what I wanted to do. And I wasn't going to let anybody tell me no. I've had more failures than successes, but I am where I am because I didn't let that dictate what I was going to do with my life. I mean, I tried to get an internship with UW's athletics compliance office. I got, turned down at the 11th hour for that. So I worked for that conference office, and I tutored and mentored student athletes at UW. And it's really just, if you want something bad enough, make it happen. Be resourceful. After tutoring and mentoring and still not having a job, I went to that career conference at Marquette, and it's you put your pride aside and you just have to go after what you want, because if you don't go after it, you're not going to get it. I feel like I'm spitting one cliche after another, but it's like they combine to make me who I am.
Yeah,
right.
And it all relates together as well.
And it does. It's just like networking is important, but I hate networking. Don't network just to network. Network with a purpose. Network because you actually want to get to know somebody and what they're about, because people where I am can sniff out in a second whether or not you actually care about them or what they're doing, or if you're just trying to get in front of them. So it's like, have a plan, but also be willing to like go with the flow. I'm very type A, very, organized, regimented, but like the best thing I could do when I was at the Marquette thing with my plan to talk to all these people is to basically like throw caution to the wind and sit down with Rod for 3 hours, and take a deep breath and go over and approach him to begin with. So it's just, I always kind of said that when I was trying to break into this, I wanted to have like a slogan or a hashtag to kind of keep myself focused and centered. So I came up with be proactive, and I spelled it a little differently. My initials are PRK. So I basically replaced the C in active with a K. And then I capitalized all of my initials. So it would be like lowercase b-e, capitalized P, capitalized R-O-A-K-T-I-V, and capitalized K. So it's like had my initials in there, but it spoke to who I was and what I was trying to be. It's like I'm a proactive person, and I'm trying to be proactive about my career. So it's just like, if you've got something that you can keep coming back to remind yourself why you're doing something, while you're basically wading through the trash of like trying to get started, I think that'll help you sleep at night, and get up in the morning and do it again. Because I was, like I said, I applied to at least 75 jobs and didn't even get a call back.
Awesome. All right. So I usually like to break this up with like a fun question. So if you were given 2 tickets to any sporting event in history, what event would you go to, and who would you take with you?
I'm not going to lie. Of all the questions you sent me, this is the one I stressed over the most, which is kind of the opposite of the point, right? But the first part of my answer is that I've been fortunate enough to go to most of the games I care about. I am Wisconsin through and through. I care about Wisconsin athletics more than the Packers, more than the Brewers, more than the Bucks. I go out of my way to go to Wisconsin sporting events, and I don't go out of my way to go to others. So I've had the opportunity to go to, the game against LSU in Houston, NCAA tournament games in Arizona. I've been to some of my favorite sporting events ever. If I would, go back, I would probably go back to the Final Four in 2015 in Indianapolis. I lived there, so I was able to get tickets through the NCAA.
Yeah.
I saw the Kentucky game. I saw the Duke game.
Ooh.
The Kentucky game was legitimately one of the best days of my life. I had my brother there and some of my best friends, and it was unbelievable. But if we're going the non-Wisconsin route, I would say probably the 2008 U.S. Open when Tiger won at Torrey Pines on a torn ACL. I would take my dad. My dad is the source of my inspiration for A, working in college athletics, and B, just like my work ethic. And we share a lot of the same athletic interests. So, if I could choose one Wisconsin game to go to that I haven't been to, I went to the Rose Bowl against Oregon, but I would say that going to maybe the game against Arizona either time to go to the Final Four with him would be great. Otherwise, yeah, I'd take my dad to the 08 U.S. Open. We went to the U.S. Open in 2016 or 2017 at Erin Hills. That was really cool.
Yeah, that's a beautiful course too.
Oh my God! We went on that Saturday when Justin Thomas shot what did he shoot this? 61.
I think so.
Yeah, and watching these guys, like the 18th hole was 600 some yards, and watching these guys go driver 3-wood onto the green, when I'm like, this would take me 7 shots to get here.
Yeah,
and these guys are like just pounding it with 2. Damn. It was crazy.
All right, I agree with all of your sports memories as well. Badgers are a huge part of my identity as well, so it's just great to hear that you've had those experiences and got to experience the Final Four firsthand as well.
Oh, it was incredible.
All right, so how is this is just a general question, but I guess how is the landscape of sports law changing, or how has your role changed even since you've been at UCF? Just policy changes within the NCAA itself.
Sure, that's a loaded question. I'll say compliance in general and sports law as a subsection of that is it's become more of a specialization in a profession in the last 10 years. Before that, you would have a lot of coaches also serving as compliance officers, especially at smaller schools. Or you would have, administrative assistants doing compliance, or just like grad students doing it as a last resort. And in the last 10 years, really since I've been an undergrad looking for my career, the advice I got back then was go to law school. You've got 50,000 other red-blooded American males going to grad school. Do something to set yourself apart. You want to work in athletics, go to law school. You'll have that law degree to fall back on if it doesn't work out, but you'll also learn how to think. Mm-hmm. Law school taught me how to think critically and to think in a way that is able to see both sides of an argument, break down complex, thoughts into like bite-sized presentable pieces. So the main change has just been that it's become a specialization where before you didn't have to go to law school to get a job in compliance. Now you pretty much won't get a job in compliance without a law degree. 5 people in my office, all 5 of us have law degrees. Mm-hmm. And we've all gotten law degrees within the last 10 years. So that is a specialization, especially at the bigger schools. They've realized the importance of compliance and how having a good compliance office can really keep you safe, and how having a compliance office that you take a lot of risks because you don't have people with that educational background or experience exposes you to the potential for a lot of major investigations. The other stuff within, the changing of the NCAA is just dealing with changing legislation, especially in the last few years. You've got all the stuff coming out about, pay for play, but that's really not, something we're involved in. What I'm involved in mostly is like the transfer rules have changed this year. It used to be that schools would block kids from transferring wherever they wanted, just basically because they're petty. But the rule changed this year, and it went into effect 3 months ago that you can't do that anymore. Kids can transfer wherever you want, okay? And you can't block kids from doing that. So it's like the role and the landscape is changing. With me, it's just like staying on top of the changing rules and the changing climate of the rules. The NCAA is doing a better job of becoming a little more liberal in their rules and their interpretations. But it's up to me to keep our coaches. Wow, I almost sounded very northern there when I was coaches. I thought I got rid of my northern accent, but
it's seeping through.
But it's just keeping coaches informed. Mm-hmm. So every month we meet with all of our coaches and we inform them of new rules or new interpretations and things that they can do to kind of stay at the forefront of the recruiting stuff so that they can do everything that everybody else can do and they know about it first so that they can get a head start. So it's really just making sure that I'm able to be informed and inform my coaches. And it's changed too from a bit more of a direct black and white to seeing the color spectrum and being more supportive of your coaches, not just giving them a yes or no, but giving them a let's find out and let's exhaust all our opportunities and making sure that we've done everything we can to get you to yes. And if we can't get you to yes, we'll get you as close to yes as possible.
Awesome. All right. So one of my final questions is how has being a student athlete had an effect on your career outlook on life?
The first thing is that it taught me discipline and time management. I didn't have a lot of free time, so I had to prioritize what I wanted to do, when I wanted to do it, and how I wanted to do it, and who I wanted to do it with. So it helped me be more efficient and also like just kind of cut out the people that weren't going to help me get to where I wanted to be or needed to be. So I was able to like really shape early on the person I was going to be in the future. I didn't have to like figure all that stuff out after college, because I was just drifting during college. I had to have a plan all the time in college. Otherwise, I wasn't going to be eligible or I wasn't going to be productive. So that's the first thing. The second thing was building relationships with people that aren't from where you are, whether that's physically, emotionally, or, socially, and just learning to work as part of a team while also doing your role. So, like I'm up at bat, that's on me. But if I'm in the field, and we want to turn a double play, it's going to take 3 people. So it's like I had to learn how to work with a team and independently, and I had to be productive both ways. And that's helped me tremendously here. Like if I'm doing something with academics, before I was on the phone with you, I was talking with our head of academics, my boss, the registrar, and the football coaches to try and figure out how we can get a kid here 3 weeks from today, but he has to take another class in the meantime. Yeah. So it's like I had to work with all those people to find a resolution, but I also had to be the one to do the background work and then communicate the information to everyone. So it's like you've got the team, but then you've got the individuals. So I've really been able to use both of those to my advantage in the workplace.
All right, and then my final question would be, what is your best career memory, or basically just the overall pride you get from doing your job? I know you've touched on this a couple times, but is there specific accomplishment from your professional career that you look back on and that you'd like to share?
Getting the NCAA postgraduate internship, because I failed twice with no indication that I'd be successful the third time, but getting it the third time and just getting a text from somebody that had been an applicant but didn't get the job, and when I told that person that I got the job, I'll never forget getting the text back of congratulations, you've punched your ticket into working in college athletics. And I still get goosebumps from that, and just I still had to do the work, but it was this is why I work hard. And it's just I'll forever be grateful for everyone that helped me get there. And the most prideful moment, there are many of them, and I'll always be proud of the next good one I have because, you know, victory is fleeting. But like, there have been some moments, especially here at UCF, where I got here and there were a lot of systems that were either inefficient or non existent. And working with people to identify the problem, like with the admissions process, about why it was taking so long and what documents we needed, and working together to like streamline that process to the point where in 2.5 years we went from needing to admit 40 kids with 3 weeks to go before fall started to 3 weeks before fall started every single kid had been admitted and everybody knew where they stood. And getting that email from the college VP and the head of admissions of just like what a turnaround it's been, that was really cool.
Awesome. All right. Well, I want to thank you again for taking the time to speak with me this afternoon. Do you have any questions for me as regarding like the mentorship program or anything regarding that?
No, I'm just happy to be a part of it, honestly, and be a resource, and be available.
Awesome.
I'm happy to be involved, man. I'm glad you all are doing this and keeping it going.
Yeah, I know. We all appreciate you guys as well. I sent an email yesterday also announcing that we decided a date for Alumni Day if you've had a chance to check that one out. But we'll be sending more details as we get that planned out. But we'd love to have you come back to Madison and show you around for the weekend as well.
Yeah, that'd be great. If I can make that happen, I will, man.
All right. Well, I will let you get back to your hectic and busy day, but if I don't speak to you again, have a happy holidays and a happy new year as well.
Hey, you too, man. Thanks for doing this.
Awesome.
Thanks for thinking of me.
No problem. All right. Well, take care.
All right, you too, man.
Awesome.